Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Exhibitor Marketing 101 session. I'm Anna Ireland, and I am the Marketing and Outreach Coordinator with Film Hub Scotland. Hopefully, I've met many of you. But yeah, thank you for joining this session today. I'm really excited to start this sort of group of sessions that we're going to be running all about exhibitor marketing. We really want to be able to support you as much as possible to get as many people as possible to your events. And marketing is obviously a huge subject area, as we all know, and it can be super overwhelming. So we wanted to run a few sessions that we're going to break that down for you a little bit and make it a little bit less intimidating and hopefully cover some of the sort of key issues that you might be facing. So this session is going to be recorded today, so it'll be available on our website to look back at any time. And we will also share the slides with you, so that you should be able to click on any of the links I'm sharing. I'll be sharing quite a lot of links throughout this that are hopefully useful for reference, so you can refer back to them as we go. This is my first time using Zoom webinar, so please bear with me if there's any technical hitches. But yeah, I will do my best. And yeah, as I say, thank you for joining us. And please feel free to pop any questions in the Q&A chat as we go. I'm going to stop every so often and we can, and I'll have a look at them. So yeah, please do let me know if you have any questions. I'm sure a lot will come up throughout this, so I'm happy to answer as we go. So I've structured this a little bit like a house, and bear with me on this one. But I'm aware that many of you working in many different organisations or members are obviously across mixed arts venues, film festivals, community cinemas, lots of variety. So it's hard to find a structure that's applicable to all, but we all hopefully have somewhere to live and with different materials and means. So I thought using this metaphor is quite a good way of thinking about our marketing as we go through. So we're going to start with the foundations of marketing. And for me, really, if you can get these foundations secure, that's going to make your marketing secure. So much like a house. So for me, those fundamentals are really who and what is your organization. Now, many of you might just be starting out. Some of you might have been going for a while, but I still think at any point in this kind of process, it's really important to think about who you are, because only then are you going to be able to inform the kind of people that you want to speak to. So I'd always start with, what are your values? What is your mission? What are you aiming for? What do you want to achieve with an event or screening that you're running? Do you have an established tone of voice? We're going to talk a little bit more about brand identity further on in this, but just now thinking, do you have colors that you like to use? Do you have a logo? How are you speaking to people currently? How would people identify your organization? If you don't have an established organization, if you're just thinking about starting your screenings, this is a great opportunity to think, ideally, what would you like it to look like? What are other people doing that you think works really well? But a really important question here is, what are your values and what is your mission statement? What do you want to do, and how, what are the values you want to inform that? Whether it's accessibility or, equality, fairness, what are you kind of looking to communicate? And once you've had a chance to sort of think about those things and sort of really nail them down, I think it's a nice chance to speak to other people in your organization. What do they think? What do they associate your values as being, your mission? Is it clearly communicated? Are you all on the same page? And if you're just starting out, make sure you're getting everyone on board into those conversations. And how do you sort of currently communicate this to people? Is it easily available? Is it something that people would already know? I think it's really important that people understand this about your organization and they know where you're coming from and what you're aiming for. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of an idea of what those foundations might consist of. Then I'd just like us to think a little bit about a kind of scary word, brand. Brand is obviously a more kind of corporate marketing term, and we will use terms like that throughout this presentation. But here I really just mean, what do you currently do that tells the world who you are? Do you have a tone of voice? So are you kind of, if you're communicating with, your audiences, are you using kind of formal language? Do you like to keep it quite lighthearted and funny? Tone of voice again sounds intimidating, but it's really just how you're currently communicating. What words do you use? Do you like to use more kind of GIFs, memes, kind of silly, silly images online, or do you tend to keep it quite simple? Use flyers, use emails. It's good to just think about what consistent themes are throughout the marketing you currently have. And if it's not consistent, this is a really good opportunity to say, okay, do we want it to be more of have a brand feel, as in something really recognizable, using a tone that is really consistent? Is that what we want to aim for? And do you adapt that tone for different events, different screenings, or do you keep it quite consistent? Something we're going to talk about a lot in this presentation is clear language. There is the Hemingway app, which I've linked here, that you can input your words into, and it tells you if it's clear or unclear and what you might want to do to improve. And again, I've mentioned logos and colours, and we've got a few examples of our members on there and their logos, which is not a necessity by any means, but it's just a really sort of easy way of recognising your organisation if a logo is something you did want to think about. All right, and there's obviously a lot of information there about your organisation and perception of your organisation. And obviously, you are going to have one perception, and the people you're marketing to, your audiences, are going to have a different one. So how are you going to gather this information? We're going to use analytics. Now, I think this is another kind of scary term. Really what we mean by analytics is the data that you can gather from any marketing that you currently do or are going to do. It's really just about the data from your social media channels, from any emails you send out, any posters. It's a way of understanding how people are interacting with you currently. So I don't want it to be too scary a word, because we're going to use it quite a lot. And I think it's just a way of using data that is already at your disposal. Most platforms you'll be using, like social media sites or any sort of MailChimps, or will already provide this data. And I think it's a really useful thing to use to understand, where you're at now and where you want to go. It helps you be strategic and set goals, which we're going to talk a little bit about as well. So I just want us to be thinking about analytics at the very start, because it can often be something we do reactively. We might look at, oh, how many people like that Facebook post? But actually, if we're able to at the start say, okay, how many people are liking our Facebook posts at the moment? Where do they live? That's all information you can access on analytics. And I'll talk about how you would access that in a little bit. But if we can do that at the start, then it gives us a little bit of a benchmark to then compare what we're doing towards the end. So let's dig a little bit more into analytics. So yeah, as I said, it gives you a starting point to create your goals, assessing really honestly your current strengths and weaknesses. Again, if you haven't started any of your screenings yet, this is just a chance to learn a little bit more about what you might want to do when you do start. But this is really about thinking, who are you currently appealing to? Who would you like to appeal to? What kind of stuff is doing well and what isn't? Are you spending ages on these emails but no one's opening them? Or similarly, are you crafting really poetic posts on X and no one's actually opening them? I'm going to use Twitter and X interchangeably throughout this presentation, so hopefully that makes sense. But I know that people kind of aren't quite moved on to using X for Twitter yet, so I'll still keep using Twitter. And yeah, I think this is also a really good opportunity when you're looking at your analytics to understand what other organizations are doing. I think it's especially in the kind of exhibition sector, there's so much great stuff happening, but we're all doing it with a very limited budget. So it's really fine to be inspired by what other people are doing and adapt that to your own screenings and events and marketing. So take this time that you're doing to assess your own platforms to do the same with other people. You might be wondering, how on earth do I access any of this information that you're talking about? So what I've done here is link some of the different platforms analytics. So if you have a Facebook account, it automatically has analytics, and I've linked there how you would access that part of your Facebook. Same with Instagram, and X and Twitter has it as well. It's just on the sidebar of your kind of homepage. And Google Analytics are how you would access your website analytics. There's so much data you can delve into here, and that would be a whole presentation in itself, but I'm really just trying to give you a little bit of an overview of how you might want to access that. And for, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, they post quite kind of simple overviews of percentage of increase of people coming to your site, your platform. So it's hopefully quite digestible, just at a top level, and then you could spend hours digging into it if you really wanted to. So once you've had a little bit of a look at your analytics, you're going to get an understanding of who is interacting with your marketing. And this is going to feed back to the kind of key point of all of this, I guess, really, which is getting bums on seats or at your event or in your venue or at your festival. And that's your audience, really. So as we know, the marketing you're sending out doesn't necessarily mean that those people are going to be coming to your events, but it's obviously there is a correlation. That's really what we're kind of focusing on today, is getting the word out about your events to a new or existing audience. So we want to spend some time thinking about that core audience at the moment. As we're kind of getting started, we're looking at what's working well, what we maybe think we can improve on. Like, who is your core audience and what is exciting them? So they're the people that already come to your events or that you anticipate will come. They're your sort of reliable group. Again, if you've not started yet, you might want to think about who you anticipate that core audience being, but they're your group that you can, however small it is, will hopefully guarantee will respond to your marketing and potentially buy tickets. I think this is a really important moment to stop and say that your core or reliable audience might be reflective of the people that are already in your organization or part of your cinema or venue, and it's important to be open to that core group changing, because I think that's what we're going to talk quite a lot about today. And we want to be getting as many and appealing and making your screenings as accessible to as many people as possible. So being open to that changing, I think, is important. But once you have this kind of group, understanding of this reliable group, it's they're a great group to ask questions to. What would they like to see more of? What kind of marketing do they engage with? Can you send out a survey? Can you do a social media poll? They're your sort of existing marketing crowd, and it's important to understand what works for them and what doesn't, so you can also ask those questions as you start thinking about your marketing. So we're kind of laying these foundations. We're thinking about the people that are already coming, and now we maybe want to start thinking about a little bit blue sky. So who do we want to be appealing to? What are you looking to achieve with any marketing, whether it's a specific campaign or maybe you're planning for the year. I think this is a nice moment to remind yourself of your kind of mission and value. So why do you want to appeal to more people? What's the kind of emotion behind that? Is it to start conversations about film? Is it to show people a particular film or season? Is it because you really want to start interesting conversations? I think it's a nice point to connect to the emotion of why we're doing this, because that can get a little bit lost, and you want to have your drive throughout your campaign that you're running of like, I'm really passionate about this, and it's a nice chance to get your team involved in that conversation at that point as well. There's also then the nitty gritty, which is, are you looking to sell more tickets? Are you looking to attract younger people? Are you just looking to raise the awareness of your screenings and events at the moment? Will you have one focus, or is there going to be many goals? how much time do you have? We're going to talk a little bit more about time and budget, but this is a good opportunity to think, okay, am I thinking long term? Am I thinking 6 months? And just start thinking a little bit at this moment, blue sky, what would the budget be? In an ideal world, if we get all the funding we're looking for, what would our budget be? We can drill into the more boring aspects now, but this is a nice chance to think as sort of optimistically as possible before you kind of get going. Okay, we're going to move on to that nitty-gritty that I mentioned. We're going to move on to the building blocks of how you're going to start building this this kind of plan for your marketing. This can often involve kind of putting your thinking cap on, and you've done a little bit of the blue sky, and now it's time to sort of think about your goals. This really helpful guide from the Independent Cinema Office that I'm going to refer to a little bit today is called Guide to Marketing, and it's linked just there. And they outline what your goals might consist of. So, are you trying to reach new audiences? If so, what ones? I think this is an important moment as well to think about, like, what does an audience member look like to you? Is it someone who buys a full price ticket? Is it someone who spends money in the bar? Is it someone who comes back regularly? So what does a kind of engaged audience member look like to you? Are you trying to reach new audiences, and which ones? What do you want them to do? So yeah, buying tickets, spending money, and how do you want them to feel at your event? I think is a nice way to touch back on that kind of the why of why you're doing what you're doing. Are you looking to change their behavior? Do they currently interact with your events, but you'd like them to do something differently when they come? Are you looking to maybe do a little bit more of an educational program than you currently do? Would you like to make your events a little bit more interactive? So yeah, thinking about all these things that you'd like to achieve from any marketing that you do. And a nice one here, they outline, which audiences will have the most influence and impact on the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. So kind of keeping the person that you're marketing to at the forefront of your mind. And we're going to drill into what those groups might look like a little bit later on. So how do you write these goals? So you've got an idea of what the goals might consist of. We're going to come back to SMART, which is, you might have heard of in different aspects. That we use it along quite a lot of different lines of marketing, but I think it's a really nice way to set out concrete goals and objectives from all this kind of blue sky thinking you've been doing. So the ICO Independent Cinema Office recommend setting about 5 objectives for your marketing, so or 5 goals that you'd like to achieve. And you, with SMART, it's making them specific, measurable. So it kind of goes back to the analytics that we were talking about. Achievable, so within a certain time frame, what would you like to achieve, and is it doable? Relevant, so how does it tie into those objectives and values and the mission statement that we were outlining at the start? And time-based, so do you have 1 month before your screening? Do you have 6 months? How are you going to achieve those goals in a certain time? So a nice way to think about this is, I would like to have attracted 50% more under 25s, but in 6 months' time to my screenings. A very sort of specific honed in goal that you can measure over time. And measurability is key there. So how will you measure that they're under 25s? Are you gathering that kind of data already? Make sure that you have those things in place. So we've gone from a lot of blue sky to then thinking about the absolute nitty-gritty of your goals, and this should hopefully kind of hone and tie that all together with the building blocks for your marketing moving forward. So we're talking about the goals, and we've talked a lot so far already about audiences, and your goals might include, I'm assuming most of them will include audiences, whether that's like how many people you'd like to come or the types of audiences that you'd like to come to your events. I think this is a really nice way of thinking about audience development. It's a quote from ICO. It says, "The cinemas that will continue to thrive are those that make an ongoing commitment to the audience they have and reach out sincerely to include more people, especially those who've been historically excluded." I think this really sets up nicely what I believe the goal of marketing to be, a genuine invitation to include as many people as possible in the events that we're running and the spaces that we're creating. This says cinemas here, but is obviously applicable to community cinemas, film festivals, a whole variety of events. It also helps us centre those who historically have not had access to the events that we're, offering, or cinema in general, or film in general. And much of the work that many of you are doing is changing this. So I think as we think about audiences and the types of people we want to incorporate, I think this quote is a nice way to frame that. So we want to think about engaging a new audience in our events that maybe haven't come before, or if you're starting events, you want to think about how to attract an audience in general. So there's lots of guides about audience development that I've linked at the side here. They're very useful. You could spend hours on them. So, but I've just given a more of an overview because this is a more general presentation. But ICO have lots of helpful guides. BFI Fan, who Film Hub Scotland are part of, have also produced young consultant marketing packs that support you to attract young audiences. So they produce marketing packs for different films that are out at the moment, and it helps you sort of target young people with those films. So the key kind of things you want to think about when you're thinking about new audiences is, how can you get people to come back? So that core audience, how can you get them to keep coming? What can you offer new audiences? What is added value? What does that look like in your kind of space? We're going to talk quite a lot about enhancements later on, so we'll drill into some ideas for that. How often would you like them to be coming? And what are the barriers that prevent them coming already? Is it geographical? Is it sort of social isolation? Is it financial? There's lots of things you can do once you understand what the barriers might be to people actually coming to your events. For local cinemas, that might be offering a friends scheme with discounted tickets, family tickets, which offers kind of both benefits for you and for the customer. They might get like a loyalty card or discounts for special events. Or if it's a geographical barrier, can you offer travel support? If you're more rural or community cinemas, or sort of carpool scheme, lift share. I believe Sky Community Cinema have started quite a successful lift share for their events. I believe Jen potentially on Tyree, there's been a similar for Screen Argyle, I think they've run a similar scheme too. So understanding what the barriers might be helps you target them a little bit more to get them to actually come. So yeah, I would spend some time digging into these guides and thinking about who you would like this new audience to be and what maybe prevents them coming to you at the moment. So a potential barrier for a lot of people can be the accessibility of our marketing and our events. So accessibility is going to be a running theme throughout the marketing, hopefully, that you do and the events that you're running. But I want to touch on it at the start here as we're thinking about new audiences and making our events sort of inclusive and accessible. I think a lot of us have really good intentions when it comes to our marketing and are hopefully learning a lot more about how we can be as inclusive with our marketing as possible. But it does require actually thinking about how to market to specific groups, not just hoping that you put the information out there, but how will we actually make our marketing and our events genuinely accessible, and also let those groups know that they're accessible, not just putting on the event and hoping that they come, but how can we really sort of create those connections? So we're going to talk quite a lot about that today as well. So this quote is from Eleanor Hayes, who works with a fantastic organisation called Shape Arts, who I've linked there. They have lots of resources and guides to help you make your marketing and events in general more accessible. And they say, accessible marketing is an important goal for cultural organisations and should be considered as pivotal as an accessible experience at venues and within programmes. So worth bearing in mind that if you're going to make your events, programs accessible, that your marketing should also reflect this. And this is a lovely way to show people that your events are for them as well. And also that all the hard work you've put in to make your events accessible is then shown to the world as well. Apologies, I'm flicking between my notes and these slides, so I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. So what does accessibility look like when it comes to our marketing? As I said, we want to integrate it from the beginning to, really make sure that positive impact starts from the audiences for your marketing as well as the audiences that hopefully come and sit on the seats. It can be a very overwhelming, especially I know for our community cinemas that, mainly volunteers doing any of this marketing. So that's why I put small things can make a big difference, because if you have really limited capacity, there are things you can do rather than being kind of overwhelmed. And this goes for much of this presentation today. I hope you can take bits from it that are helpful and not be too overwhelmed by the topic in general. I'm going to pause to check questions after this slide as well. So if you have any, please put them in the chat now. So yeah, small things can make a big difference. Most social media platforms and newsletter platforms and web platforms now will automatically offer you to write an image description when you upload an image. So that is explaining to someone what is in this image. They might use a screen reader that reads out what is in the image for them. So you want to include as much detail as possible. Keep it straightforward and simple and clear. So there's lots of guidance online for this that I have linked in a couple of slides, but a general rule of thumb is to be literal, move in a clockwise motion around the core image, rather than just picking out details at random. Try and make there a little bit of a method to the way that you're describing the image, and you can convey the tone and atmosphere of an image in quite a straightforward explanation, so it doesn't need to be flowery or complicated. Make your images clear, and any color contrast that you're using, so white on black or any, using a green on a blue is generally not considered great for people that might have any struggles with sight. So there's lots of guides online that I've linked later in this that I would always check to make sure that your colors, it might look okay on your screen, but for anyone that struggles, it might be difficult for them to view. And similarly with images, are they clear? Yeah, can people view them easily? Similarly with our language, it's really easy when we care about something and are passionate to want to use flowery, complicated language, but for any marketing, but especially for accessibility, using simple language is really important. Using unaligned text, so keeping your text left aligned where possible. It can sometimes be difficult for screen readers if there is aligned text. And similarly, it can be difficult to view italics and capitals as well, so keeping those to a minimum where possible. If you are uploading videos, if you have budget and capacity to have BSL captions, I've linked at the side there how you would find BSL interpreters. And we've got a really nice example of this coming up from Alchemy about the work they've done on BSL captions for their videos. You can also communicate the work you're already doing on accessibility. If you have accessible toilets, if you go a long way to make sure your events are accessible, you can talk about that and let people know that you're doing it. And don't be afraid to ask for help. There's a lot to learn, and it's okay to reach out and ask people how they do it, to use all these resources I'll link, and ask the questions. You can reach out to us anytime if you have any questions. It's okay not to know, and better to ask than try and just work your way through it. And important here to think about the accessibility of your space. So if you do all this work in accessible marketing, but the space or the venue or that you're showing your films in isn't accessible, that might be a challenge. So this is from ICO, their guide to marketing. they outline the importance of communicating within your venue. So have you thought about signage and wording? Is it clear where the toilets, refreshments and screens are? Have you thought about the noise levels? What is access like in the space for those with mobility issues? Is there multiple entrances? What about parking and public transport? So good to think about all this as a holistic thing, and how can you communicate that in your marketing, but then also make sure that the people that you're working with that are in the venue, how can they be as, you know, on board with making it an accessible experience all around. So this is a lovely case study from Alchemy, who this year produced a BSL trailer for their Film and Moving Image Festival, which takes place on the 2nd to 5th of May. They partnered with Deaf Action to produce this trailer. And it's in line with a range of sort of accessibility measures that they're enacting for this year's festival, which you can view on their website, which is linked there. They're also offering tickets to screenings on a pay what you can afford basis, which we're going to talk about a little bit about later, which really can help make your events more accessible. You can view the video. I'm not going to show it now, but when I share these slides, you can view the video itself. So here's lots of the links that I was talking about. Lots of great resources out there. A great website, inclusivecinema.org, that have lots of toolkits for exhibitors that are focused on inclusion and making your events inclusive. There's just a few there that you can see. Working class inclusion, audiences, colleagues and programming, a really useful resource on welcoming working class audiences to your venue. So I would definitely spend some time on that website. I've linked a lot of other resources here. Unlimited, Shape Arts. Our EDI champion, Charlie Little, has produced a fantastic access directory, BFI fan access directory, that's linked there, that has heaps of useful resources for accessibility in general, but also has a marketing section too. And Charlie is leading a webinar series all about accessibility for exhibitors. So if you click that link there, you can find out more about that. Okay, I'm just going to double check how we're doing for questions, if we have any comments or questions. Okay, I think we're okay for now, but as I say, please drop any if you have them, and be happy to answer. Okay, so we've got our foundation, got our building blocks, lots to think about there. We're now going to move on to putting this onto some sort of more cohesive structure and plan for your marketing, and how you're going to sort of take this forward into the world. Okay, so going to start with the plan. So we've got our goals and objectives that you've hopefully outlined, but how are we going to actually put that into like an actionable marketing plan? So what I'd recommend doing at this stage is creating a sort of evolving working document that you can work from with your team. So I would use a Google Doc or Google Sheets, and this means that anyone that makes edits to it, you can see and view all as one. So it's not, you've not got one person that has sole ownership of this marketing plan. It's really nice for everyone to have input into this. Even it is for one small campaign or event, or whether it's for your kind of year round, it's nice for it to be an evolving document, because as we know, things do change. So I've included a downloadable template here that is a simple template that's going to have all the kind of headings you'll want to include. So it'll help you work through this marketing plan. And these are the headings. So you've got target, what do you want to achieve? Timeline, budget, your main aim and goals that we outlined earlier. Key messages. So what are the events? Any special guests? Any key hooks? Who have you got any funders that you need to thank? Any stakeholders, any partners that are quite important to have when you're talking about your screening? Do you want any assets? So any images, any posters, anything that you need to plan that's going to go alongside your marketing? What is your kind of digital strategy? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. Strategy is an intimidating word, I know, but it's really, what do you want your digital online marketing to look like? Similarly with print, we're going to talk a little bit about that. And local media, we're going to talk about that a little bit later too. So we're going to drill into a little bit of the aspects of this marketing plan. So hopefully you'll have a chance to work through that template. And these sections are just going to give you a little bit more of an idea of what those different kind of headings can look like. So We're thinking about budget. And as we know, the best will in the world, we can only do so much with the resources that we have. So um, this is a good time to think about, well, how much money do you want to make from your marketing? You know, what kind of ticket sales are we talking about? What is the goal with the amount of people that you'd like to get to your events? Do you need to employ anyone to support your marketing? Do you want to work with freelancers, any designers for your images? And um, do you want to run any social media ads? How much do you anticipate that's going to cost? When you go on Facebook and Instagram, you can generally sort of scope out an ad, and without having to sort of pay for it, it would give you an idea of how much it would cost. What are your funder requirements? How much money are you getting, and what do you have to show that you're doing as a result of that? With budget, it can be very tempting to want to do lots of radical things with not that much, but it's also, I think, okay to play to the strengths that you've established when you've been doing a lot of your analysis earlier on. So what works really well, like it's okay to maximize that. So, you know, for example, if you're going to do a social media ad, to pay for an ad on a post that is already doing really well or that you know does well with your type of audience, it's okay to, you don't need to reinvent the wheel if you've not got too much money to spend. It can be okay to really maximize the kind of content and that you know that does well. And is there any sort of partnership sponsorships that anyone that you can reach out to, whether it's like a local company that might want to pay a little bit for your event and, you know, get a little bit of marketing, you know, have their logo on your marketing in return? Is there anything like that that you can think of that would help you bring in a little bit more money? And this is a good time to think about that. Okay, so we're thinking about our financial restrictions, but also we have time. So here I just want to, you know, think a little bit about what is the timeline for events. Ideally, we want to have as much time as possible, but there's definitely a sweet spot of not promoting an event too far in advance. You know, I generally, there's no fine rule, but I think 4 to 6 weeks out is a nice time to start thinking about maybe an individual event. If you're running, you know, a festival, obviously you're going to want to be planning that out and letting people know about even a save the date a lot more in advance. But, you know, even a program launch might happen, you know, a month or 2 months in advance, really depending on when you can get things sorted. But it's nice to, before all of that, have time to map out what those initial dates will look like. So when is the event? When would you ideally like to have people knowing about what's happening at it? And then you can add in secondary deadlines. So specific dates that you want to launch specific films, specific dates that you want to let local press know about them. So having that all in a calendar can be super helpful, even just your Google Calendar, even on a bit of paper, but just having that all written down. And then it helps your marketing tie into it. You know, if you can then say, okay, this is the date we want to have this content written by. But there's no way that your marketing plan is going to be able to get off the ground unless you're able to have those kind of defined outlines of time. Build in more time than you think you'll need for your content, because it can take longer than you think to actually write and produce this content. So give yourself time to actually make the content ahead of these deadlines that you're looking at. And think long term. We're going to talk a little bit at the end about after your events. So think about what the marketing is not going to end at the day of your event or screenings or programs. So have a little bit of a awareness in mind of what that long-term approach will look like. Okay, I'm just going to refer back to my notes, make sure I've not missed anything. Okay, so the kind of content you're going to want to be talking about with your marketing. So what are the hooks for your program or your event? Was it filmed locally? For example, Silent Roar was filmed in the Isle of Lewis, and I know that a lot of our members, especially our community cinemas on the Isles, thought about programming this as a nice tie-in to that. Are there any casts from the area? Kelly MacDonald in typist artist Pirate King is from Glasgow, so that I know there was a lot of interest for our Scottish exhibitors for that film, and that connection. Does it have any special funding? You know, BFI lottery funding that you can tap into that messaging? Can you tie it into any campaigns, awards, subject matter? We know that Oscars films and going in the back of Barbieheimer, that all did really well. But is there a sort of, a subject that's really relevant to your local community or the audience that you're aiming at that you can already tie into? Is there articles already out there that you can link to? Has it won any specific awards that you want to tie into? You can take these key hooks from existing ideas and articles and tie them into your marketing. You don't need to reinvent the wheel on that front. So this is a good time to think about those key hooks and messagings. So we talked a little bit before about how you can add value to your marketing and how you can enhance that. So a lot of these key hooks can actually be things that you are providing yourself. The benefit of being an independent exhibitor is that you have the flexibility and the connection to your community to tap into enhancing screenings and adding a lot of value for the people that come to your event, starting really interesting conversations. I think we all know that's a lot of the joy of being an exhibitor. So this is a nice chance to tie that into your marketing. So ahead of the event, like how can you drum up as much buzz about the film or program as possible? I put a few ideas here. There's a lot of really useful ideas in the link that I've got here, which is Fan's Guide to Augmenting Your Film Screenings. They've got lots of interesting ideas. A talent Q&A is a great way to start. So with typist Artist Pirate King, I know that Carol Morley, the director, did a tour of the film around Scotland. Can you tap into any of those tours? If you're not able to, if you don't have the budget for that, are you able to tap into your community? So who in your community maybe has a relevant sort of subject area related to the film? Are they an academic? Do you have a charity in your community that might have an interest in the film? Is it sort of, for example, you could do a sort of LGBT History Month, tapping into the LGBT charities in your area. There's lots of different ways that you can get sort of talent involved. Even, do you have a costume designer in your community that you could come to speak about those aspects of the film for Poor Things, for example? I know that a lot of people tapped into that aspect of the sort of beautiful costumes and getting people in their area. So there's so many great conversations and marketing you can start around that. So how can you tap into that? Food and meals is another one. How can you offer an added incentive for people to come down and tie that into the film? So if it's a film that is really food focused or has a cultural connection to food, like a Japanese film, how can you tie that in to the event as well? I've got a small case study here from Sky Community Cinema, who do a great job of enhancing their screenings. So they, for example, showed The Peasants, which is a very artistic film, and they invited an art expert along, and I believe they had Polish welcome drinks because the film is Polish. So that was a really nice way of enhancing the event. They have another one here where they invited a sound designer to a film they showed, a documentary they showed focused on sound and music. So there's a really nice way to tap into your sort of community or your area and also enhance the experience for people that are coming to your event. So we can talk a little bit about the actual content of what you're writing, so social media and messaging. We've got a nice quote here from Ellen, who works at Queen's Film Theatre in Belfast, who says, "As long as your message is clear and consistent, you can roll out your content, informative content, in a variety of formats." So going back to the messaging that we've talked about and having a really clear idea, we can then sort of get a little bit more diversive with the types of content that we're doing. So we're going to think about marketing materials. So any images that you need for your event. We've got a really nice image here from Centopia. They produce lovely images to support their program of screenings that they run. They've incorporated this still, but they've also very much got their own kind of branding behind it, which I think makes a really nice visual representation. So images are so important for your events, and they don't need to be a curated asset like we have here. They've made an asset around a film still. Even using really good film stills can go so far in telling an audience what your event will be about. So I think that spending some time getting those images together, even if you have no budget to pay anyone to make them, but getting some really good stills can really go a long way. What tone do you want your marketing materials to have? If you're showing a really happy family film, do you want to have a kind of gloomy poster? Making sure that the tone is really consistent throughout the program. Where will your marketing materials go? Do you want posters? Do you want leaflets? How will they be distributed? And do you need help for this? So who are you going to get involved to help you? Do you need a designer? Do you need people to distribute the flyers? it's a good time to think about that. I've put here, I'm not going to run through this whole thing, but this would be the kind of information if you were going to a designer with a brief, this is the kind of information you'd want to include. So giving an overview, an idea of fees. I think this would be a nice thing to return back to if this is a conversation you need to start, because this is something you need to have upfront to offer them if you're going to collaborate with someone on your images. It's good even just for yourself to think about if you're going to be designing them yourself. These are things you want to be thinking about throughout the process. But in favour of time, I'll let you have a little look at that and the kind of thing you can work through by yourself. I've put in this case study from Samostat, Eastern European Film Festival, who produced some lovely assets for their festival last year. They got an artist to create an embroidery and then they used an image of that across a lot of their promotions. So you can see the embroidery there and how they kind of used that. And then they also, I really liked what they did on social media, which was for every film, they put up a sort of the name of the film and where it was showing, and then they had a bit of an overview of what the event or program was about. And it was a very clear way for people on social media to see what was happening. And I know that the event that they have there, the Surrealist Eastern European Animation one, I know that it's sold out. So it definitely worked well for them. So some inspiration there for you. Another really nice visual poster campaign was from the local Cinema Hubs project, that was a project that ran across Edinburgh, across a variety of hubs, and they chose films that were relevant for their communities. They offered food if they wanted to. Some of them had intervals for the kind of longer films, and the Hubs project produced this really eye-catching poster that I thought was really nice inspiration for if you were running a program across a variety of different venues. I thought that was a really nice design for some inspiration. I'm just going to check if we have any questions before I go ahead. Okay, I think we're okay. So yeah, once you've got all your kind of print materials or design assets, you're going to want to maybe think about your website, making sure it's up to date, it has clear menus, testing how it works on mobile. I think website is still the number one thing that a lot of people are going to go to find out where your event is and what's happening, unless you're linking through to an Eventbrite page. So you want your website to be as up to date as possible and clear as possible. Make sure people can find what they're looking for when they go there. So I've linked some tools here that you can help you. SEO is super complicated, but this is a beginner's guide that I've linked here that helps you understand how when people Google you, how you can show up a little bit higher up when they Google, film event Edinburgh, for example. So you can spend some time going through those resources too. We're going to talk a little bit now about social media, the great beast that we could talk for hours about, but I'm going to just go a kind of overview of what you might want to be thinking about with your social media content. And the ICO outline here, what social media should do at least one of the following things. So make us laugh, make us feel something, surprise us or teach us something new, connect to our identity or a shared community, draw us into a story, and hopefully be beautiful or eye-catching, especially on Instagram. So some ideas here for how you can kind of boost your social media. So following other arts organizations, letting them know what you're up to, tagging them, not being afraid to say, hey, will you share this? We'll share yours in return. So even other community cinemas, film festivals, letting them know that you're there and that you're happy to be part of this community and happy to share their stuff too. Tailoring your content to each platform. So there's lots of sort of research out there, but I think general consensus tends to be that Facebook skews a little bit of an older audience, Instagram younger, TikTok even younger, and then Twitter and X can be a little bit more of a kind of conversational, starting conversations about your events, a little bit more of a kind of, there's a little bit more of a kind of generally middle-aged, politically engaged audience on there. So it's good to think about what type of content and which platform you want to do that on. Do you need a social media policy? Do you have one in place? I've linked a template there if that's something you want to make sure that you're covered for. There's lots of editing tools you can use for your social media content that I've linked there for captioning videos. Canva's great for image editing. And if you'd like to be down with the kids and create some GIFs, then there's an app for that too. I've linked some resources and guides there for creating social media ads. This is a great way to boost your event. So if you create a post for an event, a great way to boost it is spend even 10, £20 can go a long way in targeting a very specific group of people. So maybe you want to target under 25s in the Glasgow area. You can do that on Facebook and Instagram. So that can really be worth your while. And you can go on there and work out how much money would get you what. These are some terms I'm not going to drill too much into, but they're just to be aware of when it comes to your social media analytics. So you've got growth, engagement rate, reach, and conversion. And there's a guide there from Sprout Social about what these words mean and how you can sort of use them to track how well your social media is doing. But yeah, it's quite nitty gritty. So I just want to have it there as something to be aware of that you can maybe kind of go back to and look at with these slides. So the magic word here is engagement. You can have the best content in the world you're putting out there, it's on Facebook, but if no one's actually clicking on it, it doesn't actually mean that much. You're not going to get the ticket sales that you're wanting or attract the brand awareness that you're looking for. So there's a few tips here for improving your engagement. We know that regular posting does really well, and you can use scheduling tools that I've linked here, like Buffer and Hootsuite. These are all free, and also Business Suite, which is Facebook and Instagram Meta's sort of inbuilt scheduling tool. This means that you can schedule content ahead of time so that if you've got more time one day but limited capacity throughout the week, you can schedule all at once, and then you're making sure you're regular. And for the algorithm, I didn't want to use that word today, but I'm going to use it. It keeps the algorithm happy. So keeping your content regular means that you can show up in people's feeds more often. Can you do a competition, a giveaway? Something that's going to really grab people's attention. Could you do that? You could maybe run an ad for that. Are you interacting with your followers? You're not just posting things and then letting it go. Are you commenting with them? Are you liking on their stuff? Are you? It shows that you're actually engaging, and the algorithm likes that too. I'm going to say algorithm again. It likes image-led content. So if you can produce videos, or if you've produced some of those lovely assets and images for your event, how can you let that lead the way with your content? Having a call to action for the words, on your Twitter or Facebook. I like to think of it as a headline. So what's the first thing you want people to see? Just have that at the top. So do you want to come to a cool film event? That wouldn't be what I'd recommend, but that's an example of what a headline might be. Tapping into hashtags, is there a hashtag around the film that you're showing that you could tap into that might help people find you? And as I said, is there any sort of paid social media ads you could do? Okay. So we're just going to talk a little bit about local media now. I know this is not something that everyone's going to have the capacity to tap into, but how can you sort of create the conversation amongst any sort of media outlets that already exist? So are there any sort of vloggers or influencers? I know it's a scary word, but that can be as simple as someone that writes about film in your community. Can you reach out to them and get them to come along to the event? Can you offer them tickets? Is there any sort of local radio, newspapers, even student publications, if you want to appeal to a younger audience? Can you invite them to the event? Can you get them involved, give them some work experience, the chance to get involved with your event from the start, and then they might be able to drum up some conversation about it. I've linked here some press release templates. So there's a weekly listings one and a special events one. These are ones that you can just send out to these outlets and be able to let them know about your event and what's happening. And what can you offer them in return? Can you offer them tickets, free advertising? It's good to think about that two-way relationship. You might want to create a press contact sheet. There's a template there, and that's people that you've interacted with in this process that you think, okay, great, that worked well, we'll reach out to them again. And that builds up a great bank of people that you can go to regularly and starts a nice collaborative relationship. I've also linked a guide here for engaging with local media that you can look back on. Okay, I'm aware we're slightly short for time, so I'm just going to slightly breeze through these ones a little bit faster. We've just got a few slides left. So what email marketing, I'm sure you might have an email list, a newsletter list, but it's really worth spending some time building that email list. So can you include a sign-up link at your events? Can you put it on your email signature? Have you got a pop-up on your website? Can you offer giveaway competitions for people that want to sign up to your newsletter and mailing list? I would really spend some time building this before your event so that when your event is live and ready to go, you've got this like bank of people that are hopefully interested in hearing about it. And I've linked some software there for how you can build your newsletter. So the MailChimp has a free service for sending up to a certain amount of people. And you can create really easy on the eye newsletter templates on there that will hopefully get people clicking on the link to your event. And here's some event platforms that you might want to link to. It's always great to have your events on your website, but Eventbrite, Outsavvy, and Skiddle are free platforms that allow you to publicize your event. And on there, I would provide as much information as you can. Imagine they know nothing about your event, and make sure the image is as eye-catching as possible. Okay, keyword that I'm gonna just touch on quickly here is flexibility. We've talked a lot about structure and timelines, but you want to also be as flexible as you can. As we know, things happen, budgets change, timelines change, and it's okay that things might change. So don't beat yourself up if you've got this perfect marketing plan with all your deadlines and things go awry. I think it's really important to reflect on how well your content's doing and be okay with changing it if you're like, this just isn't working. What can we do differently? This is a nice time to say, okay, we've looked and actually no one's interacting with our Facebook posts. Like, what can we change here? And it's okay to do that. So we might run over a little bit. Please stick around. I'm going to keep the session running if you're able to. And as I said, this recorded session will be on our website. So I'm probably just going to run for another 5 minutes. So yeah, please, you can check it, check out later if you have to head off. So here's some ideas for reaching kind of new audiences with your content. So what community groups and charities can you tap into? I've linked this really helpful sliding scale tickets guide from SQUIF, Scottish Queer International Film Festival, that tells you how to create ticket prices that are hopefully more accessible. So doing a pay what you can model. What is the wording you would use on your event platform or website? You can follow that guide from there. It's really it's really comprehensive. How can you tap into online groups and community groups? So many deaf communities use Facebook. Can you tap into that network to reach these kind of new audiences? Outreach does go a long way. So a human face, like, can you go and visit a community group and say, hi, we're putting on this event. We'd love you to come along. Print materials still work really well for older audiences. Do you want to maybe run a small batch of them and make sure they're delivered to them? If you're in a kind of a community that's maybe more elderly or they're more socially isolated, it can also be really nice to have that face-to-face interaction. And being persistent when you're trying to get new audiences in, as we know, it can take time. And again, the flexibility comes in here and is important. I put in this nice case study from the Pyramid at Anderson, who did a great job at bringing lots of different types of people into their Saturday screening program that they ran. They really tapped into Glasgow's Ukrainian community for a screening of Luxembourg. I know they reached out to a lot of those community groups on Facebook and by email and actually managed to get a really great group of them to come along, who may not otherwise have accessed the Pyramid or film in general in that part of Glasgow. So, and similarly, they offered animation workshops alongside a Gaelic screening of Curse of the Were-Rabbit that I know got a lot of young people coming into the space. And they partnered with the Alistair Gray Archive to show Poor Things alongside a Q&A and exhibition. So really honing in on that sort of Glasgow tie of Poor Things and creating a whole experience around the film. That I think really went a long way in getting new audiences into their screenings. Okay, so we've kind of come to what is hopefully the end result. You've done lots of your marketing, you've got lots of ideas for how to make it as exciting as possible. You're putting on your event. The marketing on the day is still super important. We don't want to switch off just because we've done the event and we think, okay, great, I can relax, as tempting as that is. Can you pre-schedule any posts on the day? So like, we're here, we're excited to be here, we can't wait to be running this event. Who will produce that content? What do they need? Are they going to have a phone on the day, or are you just going to make sure it's all planned ahead of time? Who's going to take your photos? A lot of funders will want photos, and it's really nice to spend some time before your event thinking about what pictures you'd like to capture. So who do you want to get pictures of? Have you got any special guests? Is there someone in your community or on your team that is a photographer, has a camera? Do you need consent forms? Like, people need to give their permission to be in your picture, so you need to make sure you're complying with that. So have you got consent forms? Um, do you have surveys? Do you need a survey for your funders? Do you want to have a survey for people to let you know what they think? You can have a QR code or you can have physical copies, but making sure you've planned that ahead of time, you'll really thank yourself after for any sort of feedback that you get or any photos that you then can use in future marketing. That will be really helpful. And how will you use that? So Glasgow Short Film Festival recently, they used some of the great images to say, thank you so much for coming. We're thinking about the next one. It's a really nice way to sort of continue the audience that you've built up throughout this journey of your, marketing your screening. So maybe you could do a blog style roundup and say, thank you so much. Here's some photos, here's some quotes. And that kind of keeps your content ticking over. You can drip feed images from the event afterwards as well. You can also drip feed relevant film content. So any articles about the films that you showed, you can keep that going for your marketing afterwards as well. So I think my key point here is don't try not to switch off, as tempting and as exhausted as you will be. Try and kind of keep that momentum going. This is the boring bit, the evaluation, but I'm just really quickly gonna tap into how can you evaluate what you did? How well did you do compared to that plan that you had, the analytics that you gathered? It's a nice, when your head's a bit clearer, it's a nice moment to say, how well did we do and maybe what do we want to try differently in our marketing next time? Funders will often require this evaluation. So it's great for you to be able to say, well, we actually increased our Facebook reach by 30%, and that can hopefully help you in future funding applications as well. Okay, we have come to the end of this presentation. I'm just double checking the questions. No, I think we're okay. I'm aware that was a massively whistle-stop tour. Here's a little bit more about evaluation. Sorry. One more slide. So a little bit about evaluation there and how you might want to undertake that. This is a really helpful guide from the ICO and their guide to marketing. So I would spend some time going through that if you need some guidance on how to do your evaluation. And here is my final slide. So the end result is really essentially that there isn't one, unfortunately, but I mean that in the sense that this is an ever-evolving process with marketing. There's always things that are changing, so it's okay to evolve your approach and continue to reassess your plan each year, every 6 months, whatever feels comfortable, reassessing your organization, the audiences you want to appeal to, and having a kind of honest reflection of where you're at and where you'd like to go. It's okay for that to shift and change. So I think a nice balance of kind of having concrete goals, but having a lot of flexibility is always a good approach to any sort of exhibitor marketing. And with that, I will leave you. Thank you so much for joining today. I really hope it was helpful. We'll circulate these slides and this recording, and please get in touch with any of the Film Hub team. My email is anna@filmhubscotland.com. I'm always happy to answer any questions that you may have. But enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you very much for joining us.